right. I hope everybody's doing well today. My name's Tom Gruick. I'm a marketing specialist here at Turnkey Technologies. Appreciate everybody getting on the call today for the webinar, which is going to be the first of a monthly webinar series that we are going to start. On the call today, we have Mary Miller and Michael Vasquez from KwikTag, and they're going to talk a bit about transforming the invoice process with AP automation, and that's for both Dynamics GP and Business Central. So feel free to take it away, folks.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. Thanks for everybody joining us today, too. We're happy to be here. And there is one other person on our call today here that you can see on our presenter slide here, and that is Sean. He's the one who's messing with his camera, so if you see that going on in the background, he'll probably come back on in a second. So as Tom mentioned, I'm Mary Miller. I head up our marketing and channel program here at KwikTag, and Michael Velasquez is one of our senior technical product managers. And Sean Fitzgerald is your dedicated account executive that works very closely with the Turnkey team when you have questions or want a follow-up call or need to see a custom demo or anything like that. So we're really excited that you all are able to join us today. And as Tom also mentioned, we're going to talk about the AP process and what's going on with the current state of AP and how you can transform that. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera just so you have maximized screen real estate, but we can, there's Sean, right before we turn off our cameras. We'll come back at the end to address questions. So let me just do that. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is a little bit about what's going on in the market, the shift in AP that we're seeing, the digital shift that we're seeing, and the role of AI and how that affects us as accountants or solution providers in that space. We're going to share with you a customer success story because, you know, there's nothing like hearing from it directly from how a customer experiences this transformation. And we welcome your questions. So a bit of housekeeping. If you have questions at any point during this session, go ahead and enter them into the questions pane of your GoToWebinar panel there, and we will do our best to get to them at the end of today's presentation and demo. So following that customer success story, we are going to share a demonstration with you for Quick Payables Accelerate, which is our AP automation for GP solution. And then we're going to transition to Simply AP for Business Central. So you'll see how the process works with those particular products. And then we'll wrap it up with a little bit about the benefits and what we're seeing from our customers and the success that they're experiencing. So to jump right into the story, the digital shift, what does that mean? Well, if you've lived through these last few years of, you know, accounting and business world and operational teams being sent home and all of that, that's really the beginning of what we're seeing as the shift. And we've all had to deal with that in various ways. But the first thing is decentralized accounting. Now, this didn't just start with the advent of, you know, everybody's working from home as a result of the pandemic. We actually had started to see this a little bit more in even prior to that, where a lot of organizations have invoices that come to multiple locations. Maybe this is the case for your company. You've got multiple locations, and let's say the location manager, branch manager, head of that group is now receiving an invoice, but they're not in accounting, they're not in the home office, they're out in the field somewhere or at a remote location. So that created a challenge because we need to get those invoices into our central accounting system so that they can be processed and approved and indexed and all of that. So decentralized accounting really kind of caught a lot of organizations off guard from the perspective of lack of visibility. Now that they don't have everybody in the office anymore, it was really kind of a tough thing. They needed to look at aautomation because they weren't able to run down the hall and say, hey, Sean, where's this invoice? What's the coding? That kind of thing. So that was kind of challenge number one, is that we saw at the beginning of this process, but the pandemic made that only exacerbated because then everybody's from home, right? And now you have no visibility. So it was already sort of working in that trend, and now it's even greater. Which leads to the second thing, which is remote workforce. When we're in a remote work environment, we can't continue the same processes, right? We can't go down the hall and scan an invoice into the printer to show up for our, you know, on our desktop, because we're not in the office anymore. We've got to be creative about ways to do that. So we really need to rely on things like emailing invoices in so that they can get captured right away. So that presented another challenge. Subscription purchasing is actually the third item here, and what that is really about is as you have those individual budget owners, department managers, whether they're working at their home or some other remote office or location, they now have purchasing power, whether they carry a corporate credit card or expect to be reimbursed or whatever, they're carrying the responsibility for purchasing. So you're signing up for an app here, an app there, a service here, a service there, which is great from a convenience standpoint. And you want to give those budget owners that kind of authority. However, from a corporate perspective, it can be somewhat of a challenge to manage, because if corporately you have, let's say, a preferred relationship with a specific vendor, maybe you've negotiated prices that are your standard, now those kind of discounts and those sorts of organization-wide benefits can't be realized because each manager is kind of doing their own thing. So that can also be a challenge. While convenient, it's on one hand can be a challenge from an accounting visibility and manageability on the other. So, and finally on this point, cloud adoption. We could have a whole session just on cloud, but we're not going to talk that long about it at this point. But the fact is that as the pandemic, really affected a lot of people looking to the cloud, and I think a lot of organizations certainly were headed that direction before. This really, taught us that we needed to have some way to get into our IT systems without having everybody in the office. And we didn't want to burden our IT team that's now also maybe working remotely with anything more than our core operational, let's be able to manage our business, right? Let's work on our core, not our chore projects kind of a thing. So the adoption of cloud really made that transition to automation a much more logical step. And we'll talk about both of the solutions you're going to see today, by the way, are cloud solutions. So you'll see how that can come to life. And it just takes that burden off of IT and also the cost structure, no more servers to manage and all of that. So lots of things we could say about cloud. We'll sum it up at that for now, but happy to continue the conversation if you have specific questions about that. Now, the next point, the new role of AI, of artificial intelligence in the AP world. What we're seeing is that, the old school OCR, let's just call it the traditional OCR, was very time consuming. It was often very expensive, not only for the product licenses and subscriptions themselves, but also for the user configuration and the vendor setup, and often templates and zones, all the things that go into creating a seamless OCR product in the old world. Of creating those templates and defining those zones on your own led to a very lengthy implementation time. Now AI comes into the picture and says, I don't need zones, I don't need templates, I don't need to know exactly what the invoice is supposed to look like. I'm going to read it like a human would, like you or I would, so that we can take advantage of intelligent data extraction and see the confidence level at which these data fields are extracted. You'll see that a little bit later in one of the demonstrations. Another factor, AI saves time by reducing data entry. In some cases, there's even the efficiency of straight-through processes if that's supported by your organization. So if you want an invoice to be read by AI, if the PO matches, send it straight through to Business Central, that can now be done. So AI really plays a significant role. It also enables a lot of the additional visibility and process automation that you can do once the data is in the system. So in our case, the AI built into our AP automation solutions also reduces that setup and services cost that I mentioned a moment ago. You'll see usage-based pricing so that it scales to meet any budget. So we used to have customers that, if they were processing 100 or 200 invoices a month, they thought, oh gosh, I can't afford it. It's going to be way too expensive. The setup time isn't going to be worth it. And now we're hearing from customers that have a couple hundred invoices a month that go, I don't know how I lived without this. So if you're in that sort of need to make a decision and trying to build a business case, definitely think about the things that you're going to learn and see here on this discussion and presentation to factor in to overcome that challenge. It's no longer budget prohibitive, cost prohibitive for a lot of organizations. So to share an example of one of our customer success stories, we actually worked with a company. This is a software technology company that was headquartered in the southeast of the United States, but they had, they're located in 28 states and 5+ countries. And so they had multiple countries, multiple locations, multiple entities, if you will, and they're a supply chain software company. So they were already looking, at AP automation and had talked to us, I'll just say maybe back in 2019 or so. It might have been a little bit earlier than that, kind of put the project on hold. And if you're in this boat, we hear this a lot, you're not alone. But they said, we're going to put it off a little bit. We're hoping it makes next year's priority list. And at that point, next year was 2020. So March of 2020 comes around on the calendar, and we got a call from them at the very beginning of when everybody needed to go home. They're a supply chain software company, so you can imagine the impact of everything that affected them at the beginning of COVID. They called right away and they said, Sean happened to be their account executive, said we can't function like this anymore. So it was a challenge before. Now it's an absolute must. Their challenge is where they had absolutely no visibility into their invoice or their payment approval process. Coding was being done incorrectly. They had GL codes that didn't have control over if it was for one entity or another, and people were just finding a way to get codes into the system so that invoices could be paid. It took months and weeks to get through month-end close process. They were constantly doing journal entries to reconcile everything. And the bottom line was they just had too much paper. And they were right at that point about to move to a different floor in the building where the CEO had said, we're no longer going to support printers and we're no longer going to have paper. We've got to find a way to automate this. So the timing at the beginning of COVID obviously made that even of greater impact to them. But they found a solution they could work with. And Sean, why don't you tell us what that is, since you worked with this customer when they got started?
Yeah, you bet. I love this story, Mary. You
Mm.
mentioned that they had tried once and not decided to move forward, and then you may not know this or forgotten, but that was actually their second attempt. So they tried twice and kicked the can down the road.
Right.
Yeah, there was another one in there. So and the customer we're talking about and our lead, the champion for this project that I had worked with, I'd met at industry events those 2 or 3 years prior to this, and such a great guy and so enthusiastic and just a person you want to pull for. He was working so much for this company, long hours, as was people in the AP department, but for some reason they just couldn't bring a solution in. And so they finally, when they went with us and they adopted our Quick Payables solution, which is our AP automation solution for GP, they dove right in. And your point, you might have missed that comment that Mary made, that they were moving to this floor where management had said no more printers. That's a real thing. They weren't going to have printers. Like, they were forcing everybody to go paperless, so they had to do something. But with 1,000 invoices a month, PO and non-PO alike, they also used binary stream MEM, multi-entity management. If any of you out there use that, you know what an important solution that is, but it's a pretty thick, heavy GP integrated solution, and we have a fantastic solution that integrates with that. And so that's another important point to take away from this. If you have any third-party solutions connected into your GP system, you got to really consider that when you choose an AP provider, because they have to, there's some of them, not all of them, some of them, like binary stream MEM, where you have to have a fully integrated solution, and we do. But they installed it, it went great. Definitely time at the office was reduced by all, including the AP staff. Things got much more efficient as they went forward. And the best part of the story that I love, Mary, is the efficiency award that the accounting department won from the company towards the end. I forget what it was, maybe 2021 they won that award. Yeah, for innovation and efficiency, and they won this, and they were under a little bit of it's a big company, a lot of people, and they were kind of under some scrutiny, right? Leading up to that. They weren't the darlings of the company, but they became that. So it's really a great story, yeah, one where it's just picture perfect for us. So I loved it.
Yeah, no, they're a great customer to work with. And next, Sean, I'm hoping that you can show us an example in the demonstration for Quick Payables for GP of the type of solution that they have in place. So make you presenter and let me know when that comes up.
All right, let's make sure that, let me know when you see it. 3, 2, 1, there we go.
There we go.
Got it?
Yep,
okay.
You're good.
So from a Quick Payables perspective, and I'm going to give you the GP part, and then Michael Velasquez, my colleague that's on the call, is going to come in and talk about another part of our solution, which is exciting. I can't wait for you to hear about that. But this is our GP AP automation solution. So for anybody in the crowd that's using GP today, which is most of you, and you need some improvements for your invoice solution, this is what you would use. Now, something that you may know if you've heard about us before, but KwikTag is a document management solution as well. So you're going to get that with KwikTag. We're not going to talk about that today, but that's in here. And then on top of that, you're going to get this AP automation solution. Again, Quick payables. It is, as Mary said, these days delivered as a cloud-based solution, so a SaaS solution. So it's very quick to implement and get up and running. No IT cost or anything like that, or really almost no IT involvement at all on this thing. Typically, we'll take care of all that for you. There's no hardware or anything you have to worry about. But what we're going to look at here is what happens when an invoice comes in and gets routed for review, or in this case, matching, and then entry into GP. So we handle non-POs invoices as well, which those are the ones that typically need to route for review and approval. We're not going to look at that today. We're going to look at what happens if you have a purchase order invoice that comes in, whether it be a two-way match or a three-way match. And so we're going to look at the three-way match one. So a purchase order, what we're assuming here, number one, is that the purchase order exists in GP. That's an important part to know about the KwikTag solution. And I say that because there's some of you that are in industries where you've gone out and gotten a purchase requisition solution or a purchase order solution that may be very specific to your industry. In order to use our invoice solution to match to your POs, they do need to be in GP. So here we have a purchase order that is already in GP. KwikTag doesn't do anything with that. We're not a purchase rec solution, but we're going to assume the purchase order is in GP. In this case, it's a three-way match, so there's been a receiving transaction, right? So we received something in the warehouse or something like that, and that transaction has been entered. So the first two of the three-way match transactions have already taken place. Here we are with the third of the three ways, and that's the invoice, right? The invoices come in. So you send invoices into KwikTag. Your vendors can email them straight in for you if you want. Any employee can email them straight in for you, no problem. Or, of course, if you get them in the mail yourself and they come to AP and it's a hard copy piece of paper sitting in your hand, you can just scan it right in. However you get it, getting it into KwikTag is really simple. So we've already put the invoice in, and this is, we'll go to the inbox. I have some, we call them work queues here on the left-hand side. That's kind of an old term I use. I've been here a while. You might think of it as an inbox, but you see we have several different little, notification or buckets on the side, if you will, right? Inboxes on the side. So I am going to take a look at our purchase enter match for a three-way. So I'm going to click on that one, second from the bottom. That little inbox will open up. And here's all the transactions that I have in here. So here's all the records that have come in, the invoices that have been sent in one of those ways that I talked about. Now, this is a demo database, so I share this with my other colleagues. So I'm going to filter on mine. I knew that SF would get me to my specific document, so those are my initials. So let's click here on this little icon. We're going to open this up and see what we got. So there's the document, an invoice from Uline, and that came in. And so as you can see, the information on the left-hand side, as GP users, you'll recognize, hey, those are all GP fields, and they are, because again, we're going to, at the end of this, we're going to push this into GP and create the proper transaction for whatever it is that we're doing. So it's got to be, good data in, good data into GP. So, but the cool thing is that KwikTag read this document on the right-hand side, this invoice, okay? First of all, it determined that it was a PO, so it moved it to the right PO inbox in KwikTag for you. Already applied some intelligence there. And then it found the purchase order in GP, it went looking for that, and pulled that information back. So that results in our header information, which is what you're seeing right now on the screen, things like the vendor ID, the vendor name, that came from GP, right? And then the vendor doc number, which in this case is an invoice number, the invoice date there on the second line, the amounts of 94 plus the tax, getting us to $100.58. All that's lifted off of the document on the right and put into the correct fields. But then if I scroll down here, you'll see we have some purchase invoice lines. I'll highlight that in blue. So this also was pulled back from GP. Okay, so now, even though you're in KwikTag, you're looking at this document on the right and you're seeing what GP says that we have, right? Which is what you need to match it against. So I can see, yep, the PO shows us that we had a quantity ordered of 200. We received against that 200. So again, that part of the three-way transaction has taken place, and then a quantity to invoice. Okay, and this is one of the few editable fields at this point, much like GP would allow you to do. Right, you can update this. So as we look to the right, we see that the invoice has 200 on it. So it's a perfect match. The unit cost is 47 cents, which is another thing you could change if you needed to. Again, what GP, same thing GP would allow you to change. And we don't need to, because we have, as I said, we have a perfect match. But if we didn't have a perfect match, if either one of those was off, maybe there's some on back order, they only sent us 100. Maybe there was a price increase to 67 cents and they didn't tell us about it. You can make the change right here and update it, okay? But what if that difference of quantity or unit cost throws you out of tolerance, right? What if you have a variance that you allow for internally and this exceeds that, right? Hey, 20 cents per unit, somebody's got to explain what's going on. So you may need to then communicate internally and find that out. Well, that's where the workflow comes in. You come right up here, you click this little, in this case, we call it an approver list. I pick somebody from the list. Maybe Mary's my purchasing manager. I can throw in some workflow comments here saying, whatever I might want to. And Mary, please explain how come the unit cost is 20 cents more. She gives a call to the vendor, figures out what's going on, and then she's going to get this notification. By the way, this is going to activate an email to Mary with all this information, with the invoice attached, with my comment, my question, so then she can figure it out on her side, send it back to me. And it'll come to me via email, but it'll also come to me here in my next task. She gets on the phone, figures it out. An hour later, I got this back in a task, in a queue for me with her answer, and I can make any adjustment that I need to, okay? Now, we don't need to do that. We're gonna eliminate that because we have the perfect match, but I just want you guys to know that functionality is available. I'll make a comment here. I'll say, Turnkey is the best. All right, so that'll be our comment. If there were any workflow comments to go along, they're going to flow through with the workflow, and they're going to go into GP as well. All right, so purchase invoice is good to go. I'm just going to go ahead and hit submit. So again, whether this was a perfect match from the beginning or I got the information back from my workflow, once I get to the happy place where all the information is correct, I just hit submit. I'm submitting this to GP. So let's jump over there and see what that looks like. So we are going to go to our enter match screen here. We're going to enter match invoices. And right here, KwikTag functionality is in GP at 50, 60, 70 screens, depending on what you have activated and what you're using. And you're going to find that embedded. We don't integrate to GP. That's too light for us. We are embedded in GP. It's much deeper than that. So that's why you see us here off the additional menu, view tag documents. It would be uploading and attaching, view, search, view work queue. That's what we want to look at now. So if I open that up, that was our, we had our KwikTag work queue that we were just in. Think of this as your GP, / KwikTag work queue. Okay. So there's our transaction. We only have two, and there's ours. You can see by my comment, Turnkey is the best. That's the one that we just sent in for Uline. Now, if I had, real case scenario, I'd probably have, who knows, maybe 10, 15, 20 invoices here. If you're doing these every day, maybe a couple times a day, moving them in, you could come in and select any number. I only have two to show you my example, but you can select any number of invoices and hit create. You're going to create the invoices into GP. And so you can do that, choose as many as you want, you assign them to the right batch, and you can move, multiple at one time. We'll just do ours. I'll hit create. It's going to ask me what batch I want to assign it to. Here's all the open batches. I'll pick an open batch, the Sean three-way demo batch. I could name my own batch and start a new one if I wanted to, right in that little field. As I said, I'm going to do the open batch. We'll hit yes, and that will move out of there. And now it's been created. So we'll come here to do a lookup, and I'll show you what that looks like. There we go, Sean three-way demo batch. And then we open it up and we see the transaction's been created, brought in all the line items, header information, line items, they're all right there. And then when I go additional view documents, we'll open this up and we'll see that we have our invoice attached right there. Okay, so I can click on this. Anytime I come back to this transaction, I'll have the visibility to the invoice right there. Now, no. And so this is by the way, this was a three-way transaction. Had I used KwikTag to attach a document at the purchase order screen, Maybe I did when I did the receiving transaction, I put like the packing slip, the bill of lading, whatever it may be, and attached to that. Any associated documents in this transaction will display in this window that's on top of GP right now. I just have one, so we're just seeing one. But again, if I had put others there, they would be right there. So that's pretty great because you have visibility to all the documents related to this transaction that you uploaded. Okay. So that's it on that two-way match. It all works pretty exactly the same way. Non-PO invoices, as I said earlier, pretty similar, except they're going to have a stop off with someone to take a look at and click approve and that type of thing. But it's all pretty much the same. They come into KwikTag. KwikTag automatically, applies the KTIQ, which is the, current day OCR. Although as Mary said, it's AI and machine learning. KTIQ gets applied. And we route for review and approval, or we match and we push into GP. So no matter what you got going on in AP, pretty much most of the time, KwikTag can take care of it for you. So that's it on the GP side. Mary, I'll pass it back to you for the.
Awesome, thanks, Sean. Yeah, I'll grab back the slides here for just a second as we continue the conversation about BC as well, and everything you just showed, Sean. I'm always encouraged to hear even the example as it relates back to the customer we were just talking about. You mentioned it was really fast and easy for them to get started, and they had this whole, ability to earn awards and win awards and things like that. And in their case, they were actually, when they called us, I believe it was the second week of March, they were live by the third week of April. So, and again, because that was at the beginning of COVID, it was like we will dedicate 100% of our time to make sure this gets up and running very quickly. And in that situation, 5 weeks was fast. And it certainly is for this type of project. It's, we see more and more of them going that quickly, especially in the GP space, where there is some implementation and everything that you just showed for the demonstration of the AP flow. Now we're going to take that and put it on steroids as we shift gears to talk about Simply AP for Business Central as well. And what that means is that we're actually giving you the opportunity to get up and running in less than a day. Now, I know what you're all thinking, like, yeah, right, it's too good to be true. And we had somebody, Michael, just the other day, right, tell us that sounds too good to be true. And then Michael showed them as he's going to show you today. But let me just explain a little bit about Simply AP for Business Central and how it's a little bit different, how it's very unique in the market, especially with this fast time to solution. So as you can see on this slide, it is, of course, an automated AP solution, and it gives you the opportunity to have a touchless invoice experience, such that when an email is received with an invoice, if that invoice is read by our artificial intelligence data extraction, everything matches to the purchase order in Business Central. It can enable straight through and have that purchase invoice created inside of Business Central automatically for you, which does a couple things. Obviously, it increases your efficiency and gives you a very seamless integration to Business Central, kind of the bottom of that first column there, but it also removes the data entry risks and the human error that we're all prone to when we're doing 10-key, when we're, rifling through 100 invoices an hour kind of a thing. So it takes that out of the equation. We've learned, and maybe you can relate, that 74% of AP professionals claim the manual data entry as their #1 challenge in their current AP process. So we take that out of the equation. It's 100% automated. And again, it reads the invoice just like you or I would, so it doesn't need to be trained. Now, the ease of access and seamless integration with Business Central, much like what Sean just showed in GP, only we even bypass a couple of steps in that. So our products are getting smarter as the market and technology evolves as well. There are several reasons why the GP and BC experience are different, but we're gonna, again, shift to the discussion around BC, where that transaction, the purchase invoice, unposted purchase invoice in this example, is gonna automatically be created inside of BC. And it's a seamless integration. Just like what you saw with GP, there's no import, export, you don't have to upload anything, you don't have to transform a data file or anything like that. It's all just as if it's in the product. Okay, the middle column, the scales to meet your needs, because it's native cloud and usage-based pricing, which means basically the only variable is the number of invoices that you process. It really helps you control the cost and know exactly what you're signing up for. There aren't additional professional services fees. In fact, Michael is also going to show you how quick and easy it is to set up, which leads me to the next point in that column, which is fast time to solution. You'll get started in 3 simple steps. You sign up, you connect to Business Central, and you start adding your users and your approval. It's just that simple, hence the name. And then finally, the right column, secure and easy to use. We're integrating with Azure AD and your identity and security provider that is being utilized for Business Central. So you don't have to adopt another security protocol. You don't have to change anything to be able to work with Simply AP. We're going to fit right into your experience. And the intuitive user experience actually streamlines the invoice queue and identifies everything right away, whether it's a purchase order or a non-purchase order. You'll see that in the demo in a moment as well. And then finally, the DIY setup. There's going to be workflow tips and, tricks, little boxes of, steps. Here's what step 1, step 2, step 3, guided tours within the product so that you can do it yourself. If you want to call us to help, great. If you want to call Turnkey to help, great. We will enable you to do that either way, but it's very simple to get started, and you'll see that in just a second as we talk through the demonstration flows. So Simply AP for Business Central is going to show you that streamlined invoice coding and approval process that I just mentioned. Again, it can go straight through if there is a variance tolerance and it's not exceeded by your business rules. It can go straight from receipt to Business Central. But if an invoice does need to be routed for review and approval, what's going to happen is we're going to email invoices in the same way as if we were using some quick payables for GP. We're going to extract those data fields, populate the header of the invoice, and show you the confidence level with which we believe those data fields are as they match to the invoice. And we're going to leverage data in BC to make sure we're validating things where possible. We're going to retrieve then the receipt lines of the purchase order from within Business Central. If an invoice needs to be routed for approval, of course, we support that as well. And then it gets submitted for approval and auto-created in BC once it's approved. So that's kind of the general flow that we're going to talk through. But then we'll see an example of this fast and easy to configure. So Michael's going to show you the invoice workflow first, and then the configuration, where he's going to connect to Business Central and the user authentication, and he will select from your existing Business Central companies. If this was your environment, and our test environment obviously will connect to our demo environment, and then add users that come in directly from your Azure AD, from your Active Directory list. So you don't need to go create a whole bunch of users or type manually in about names and emails or all of that. You'll set the approver limit and set who somebody approves to, let's say their budget manager or the person they report to within the organization, and then you're done. You can start using invoices. We had, Michael, one customer just last week, right, say it's so easy a CFO can do it. So he was so excited to be able to share that. And they were up and running in about an hour and 15 minutes, I want to say, as I recall.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, the whole idea of getting started and having it be literally minutes and hours to solution instead of even weeks and months for organizations. Like I said, the one person said it seems too good to be true, and yet you're going to show us that even by the end of this call, people would be able to get started with Simply AP.
Definitely.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks. Please take us through it.
All right, thank you so much. Great lead in, and thanks for the demo on Quick Payable, Sean. So diving right in, this is the Simply AP login screen that you'll be met with once you sign up and get your account all created. I'm gonna go ahead and sign in here as an AP user. So were this my first time signing into Simply AP, I'm going to immediately be met with those user tutorials, step-by-step hand-holding guides, as Mary was mentioning earlier. It's definitely going to give the AP team or the AP personnel familiarity with the application itself. So it's going to go through, component by component, give them the idea of what they're working with, searching, the grid, advanced searching, ways to get invoices into the system if they weren't going to take advantage of email, that kind of stuff. So I'm going to just kind of fly right through those. But so as emails come into the system, or as invoices rather come into the system, once they're emailed in or scanned in, if you're still utilizing hard copy or electronically digitally uploaded, as Sean was saying, a lot of companies we're seeing are just getting away from printers and scanners and going full digital, which we fully embrace and support. So once those invoices come in, they're immediately going to be sent to that intelligent data extraction service that we've been talking about, KTIQ. What that's going to do is that's going to analyze the invoice, read it as a human eye would. So it's not, the old-fashioned zonal OCR. Doesn't need to be trained. It doesn't need to be configured. We manage that service, we host that service. And by virtue of using AI and machine learning, it is getting better every time an invoice passes through it. So Mary mentioned the confidence ratings you'll see in a little bit. That's definitely in play here. So it analyzes the invoice, pulls vendor information, invoice information, purchase order information, pretty much anything it can grab off that invoice it's going to. And not to stop there, it's actually going to go into the BC data as well and utilize some of that invoice data to pull even more information for the user. So what you're seeing here is the majority of that information laid out in a grid form. So if the AP team kind of knows what they're working with here, they can sort by status. They can actually filter these. So if they just want to process the new invoices, they can deselect those other workflow statuses. If they knew the specific vendor they were looking for, they can actually start typing up here in our simple search, character by character. It's going to look through all the invoices that are in play and display whichever ones match that criteria. You can do a simple search by invoice number, purchase order number, vendor, all that kind of stuff. It's a really nice, quick and easy way to access some invoices. They could also take advantage of advanced search. Obviously, advanced search is going to be far more robust. It's going to give date ranges. Likewise, you can search by status here. If you didn't know the vendor name offhand, you could scroll through all the vendors within your respective companies that are integrated into Business Central or into Simply AP. Invoice number, dollar threshold amount, that kind of stuff. Again, we try to make it as painless and effective as possible to look for that information. As an AP user, though, going back to kind of coming right into the system, I'm going to see a couple things here. One, current assignee. This is going to tell me obviously who these invoices are assigned to. Some of these are in varying steps of workflow, pending approval. Some have been rejected. There's this ready for ERP step that I'll discuss in a little bit. But some of these are assigned to named users. A couple of them are assigned to myself. Sean's got one. Our other colleague Danny's got a couple. But you'll see Corp AP. That is going to be the initial assignment of invoices as they come into the system. We're going to assign them to the AP team. So individuals who are in that AP role are going to have access to pick and choose which invoices they're responsible for. So earlier today, I sent this invoice in here, the second from the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and process that one. So note that it's assigned to Corp AP, and although my user is in the AP role, I'm not going to be able to actually process this invoice until I claim the invoice. So in the bottom right-hand corner, clicking the claim button is my action of taking ownership of this invoice, this process for this invoice. So as I clicked claim, it assigned it to myself, and it also made the data editable. Also notice that it's been color coded. A lot of the fields have color coding on them now. So as I hover over them, you're going to be able to see a little tooltip pop-up that'll tell you what those confidence levels or confidence ratings that Mary had mentioned earlier in the presentation really show. So these fields have been through, or this invoice rather, has been through our data extraction service, and there are a couple that are in the yellow range, which is that medium level. So we're fairly certain we got it right, but we want to give you the opportunity to verify that. Maybe for whatever reason, an O looked like a 0 or an L looked like a 1, whatever the case may have been. It wasn't as confident in that value. The greens, high confidence. You don't even need to take a look at those. You can trust that it grabbed what it needed to grab and did what it needed to do. Should there be the infrequent use case of a red field, that's definitely going to be something you'd want to take a look at. Maybe there was a crease through the invoice or a smudge, or something ran off the edge of the invoice, whatever the case may have been. That would tell you in a big red fashion that you're going to want to take a look at that. One of the advantages of that intelligent data extraction and analysis is, as Mary has been talking about, as well as Sean in his presentation, PO matching. So this is a 3-way purchase order invoice that came through. So What we want to do is we want to make this, again, as efficient as possible. We want to take as much off the plate of AP as possible and get these invoices passed through and paid as quickly as possible. So we extract the invoice total off the invoice, and also down here you see coded amount and difference. Difference obviously is 0 by way of that match being happening here, 94 to 94. Now coded amount was not taken off the invoice. Coded amount was actually analyzed and extracted based off of the purchase order number on the invoice. So we grabbed the purchase order off the invoice over here. We looked into the BC data for that vendor, any open PO that matched that number. We grabbed any received lines for that purchase order, added up the total, and gave you the total right here. So that's going to be the coded amount. And you'll see that down here in the center section, this is the sole purchase order item that had been received on the BC side. And you'll see line total was 94. So that'll tell you right there, it's a $0 difference. This is an exact match. Now, later on in the presentation, I'm going to show the administration side of things where you can take advantage of what Mary referred to as that straight through processing PO auto matching feature that we've added. So we're going to allow you to enter 2 configurations. One is going to be the percentage variance that's acceptable for a difference between the invoice total and the PO total. So whether that be 2%, 5%, whatever your acceptable range is for this invoice to simply bypass the AP process and be automatically created into BC, as well as a dollar limit threshold. So, if this invoice ended up being a relatively large amount of, $50,000 invoice or, a large amount, and that percentage ended up being quite a high value. We're not talking cents here. We're not talking a few dollars. If it breaches that dollar limit of say $20, $50, whatever you're comfortable with, it will land here in this list and it'll give you that difference in red. It'll tell you there was a discrepancy between the totals, and this was the difference. Something happened. You'll want to route this for review. You'll want to contact the buyer, maybe the vendor, figure out what happened. If the difference was either an exact match or within that percentage variance and beneath that dollar threshold, it will completely bypass this process and auto create into BC. What that's going to do is that's going to make your vendors extremely happy. That's going to get that invoice paid. It's going to get through the process. It's going to make AP happy. They don't need to stare and compare on invoices against the purchase orders. It's just going to be all around an advantageous feature for you guys to implement. So again, down here in the middle, if this were not an exact match, we could take advantage of looking at the purchase order line items, maybe modify the remaining quantity or unit cost. We do have full support of dimension coding, both at the line item level as well as the header level right here in a different tab, the invoice level dimension codes. So if you do have default dimension codes for either line item or the invoice level, we'll bring those in for you. If you do have the situation where an invoice comes in that is invoicing multiple purchase orders, we do give you the opportunity to perform a search on a different purchase order and bring in the lines that have been received for that one as well, so that you can invoice both or many. If this were a non-purchase order invoice, you could flip this to non-PO and do your account coding here. So if you did need to add a line and do some account coding instead, you can definitely do that. Comments, please take a look at this invoice. So as Sean mentioned in his demonstration, likely purchase order invoices aren't going to be sent around for review and approval. Some customers we have do that, just added precautions, but likely the purchase order itself was approved when that was created. But for demo purposes, we'll route this for review anyway. But you can take a look at the history, the audit history, each step of the way. Anytime an invoice has been interacted with, we'll timestamp that with the user who took care of that, as well as some details, so that you can audit every step of the way. Let's see, I'm gonna go ahead and route it to myself, make this thing easy. Before I do that, I'm actually let's tack on a TK onto the end of the invoice number so that we know what we're working with here. So when I go ahead and submit that, you'll notice if you blinked, maybe not, the status down here changed from new to pending. It did route back to myself, so not very exciting there, but you will also receive emails of approval. If you do have invoices that are awaiting your review, you'll get an email that will have a listing of all those invoices, as well as their invoice data and a link back to Simply AP to take a look at either the rejection or the approval that you need to take care of. As I click into here to complete my review, I'll be able to see obviously all the invoice data, the invoice itself. I can take a look at the line items, the dimensions again, the comments, the history. One of the most important things here, see, when this invoice came in, was it a week ago? Was it, a month ago? Was it yesterday? Who sent this to me for review? Any comments they may have had here, and I'll say, this is okay to pay. Conversely, if there was an issue, I could definitely reject it and add some rejection comments as well. Now, in our demonstration setup here, for demo purposes, we are leveraging an optional step in our workflow. As you heard me mention before, this green chip here, this green workflow status ready for ERP, it is an optional step. So once an invoice has been approved, it's actually going to route back to AP. Some customers would prefer to, have their AP team be that final line of defense before this hits the books. They want to take a look at the coding, they want to take a look at the, the purchase order information, whatever that scenario may be, to make sure that they have that, that final buy-in on what's going into Business Central. So when I approve this, the status is going to flip to ready for ERP, and it's going to be routed back to the AP team. So as an AP user, I'm going to go ahead and click into this. And again, I'm going to need to claim that. I'm going to, say I'm the AP user who's going to go ahead and finish the processing of this invoice. I can take a look at the comments, the history again, see what happened with this guy. And if I'm okay with it, I can go ahead and submit it. Now, when I submit it, that is the final step in the Simply AP process. You'll note that back in the Quick Payables experience, there was one final step of actually going into GP, pulling up the work queue in GP, choosing the invoice, putting it into a batch. Now in Simply AP, we don't have to worry about that process. We're going to auto create it directly into BC and put it into the purchase invoices screen. So once I go ahead and click submit, that's going to leave my queue, my invoice list here, and we'll hop over to Simply AP. Oh, I was hoping it wouldn't log me out, but I was sitting here for too long. Let's see. So come on. So with version 1, we are auto-creating into the purchase invoices screen. So it is an unposted purchase invoice in case the customer does have some last-minute things they want to take care of on the Business Central side. In further versions of Business Central or of Simply AP, we're going to add the concept of auto-posting as well. So it'll be auto-created into the posted purchase invoices screen if the customer should like that. Over here on the right-hand side, when you get into your purchase invoices screen, you'll see in the fact box, Simply AP. Similarly to GP, it is a very light footprint. GP is a bit more embedded, as Sean said. This is more of an integration. We wanted to go as light as possible so that we could avoid any issues with Business Central upgrades or updates or anything like that. It's an extremely light footprint. It's available in the app source. It's about 2-3 clicks to get it installed. Very, very easy. Down here, the newest invoice pushed in here was that TK invoice. I'll go ahead and click that. Click View on Simply AP, and it's going to route me back to Simply AP. You'll see my user guides pop every time I come in here for demo purposes, but you'll see that it's been created in ERP. You can see all the invoice data. You can see the history all the way through up to when Simply AP auto created it into BC. Everything time-stamped. You can see the comments. Download the invoice if you'd like, whatever you need to do here. And that's about it as far as the AP process in Simply AP itself. Mary, did you want me to go right into the administration portion?
Yeah, if you don't mind, let's take a look at the admin part as well. And one comment I'll make as you're getting there, Michael, just for the audience, is that that history tab, when you're in the demo and in the real time moment, those things are, you just kind of take it for granted. But where this really comes in handy is audit time, right? Like internal or external audits. The auditor comes in at the end of the year and says, show me every invoice over X amount, show me every invoice to this vendor, show me every invoice in this date range. All of those filters that Michael showed you at the beginning for search then take you to the list of invoices that meet that criteria, and you can show this very quickly. We've had customers say that, when auditors come in, it helps them sail through the audits. They don't need to go hunting for documents, and they can see exactly, like he said, date and time stamped who did what, so they can ensure that those invoice processes adhered to your business processes and your compliance requirements. So comes in very handy then as well. But yeah, definitely let's take a look at how easy it is to get set up, Michael. This is one of my favorite parts.
Sounds good. So as you come into Simply AP, same kind of entry, but if you are an administrative, if you do have an administrative role, go ahead and expand. You actually don't need to expand that, but you'll see this added tab here, administration. I'm going to go ahead and click that. And what I'll be met with is the administration portal of Simply AP. It's very, very simple, obviously play on the word, but if I click this little blue circle, I'm going to be met with those same user guides that you saw from an AP perspective, but in this case, it's going to help me set up Simply AP. Again, try not to blink, maybe hold your breath. This is going to go pretty quickly. It's very, very easy to do. We can do this in less than an hour, depending on your IT perspective. Although, as Mary mentioned, a CFO even did this. So I'm going to go and click the first user guide, integration settings. The guides themselves are very detailed. We provide links to knowledge base articles to show you exactly what each field is looking for. So this is how you're going to integrate into BC itself. Some of these will be pre-populated for you. Some of these will, be self-explanatory. Others, may need a bit of reading on the knowledge base, but very easy to do. And once you've saved this, it'll show you a status of connected on your integration into BC. Next would be your identity provider. Again, as Mary mentioned, we are fully integrated into Microsoft Azure Active Directory. We do defer completely to the security policies that you as a customer have. We do not presume to, to overstep our bounds there. We do respect whatever security policies are in place. All the user authentication and everything is managed by Microsoft Azure AD with this integration. This supports, or this allows for single sign-on, a very, very easy integration with the Active Directory setup. Again, knowledge base articles and details. Once I'm good there, status is connected, I can jump over to companies. Companies is going to be, once your BC integration settings are configured, it's going to pull in the companies on your BC side. You can see the associated vendors, the company information. The PO invoice tolerance is going to be your straight-through processing configuration. So if you did want to add that straight-through processing, you can set the percentage variance here, as well as that dollar limit that it should not exceed, and then go ahead and activate it. So once that's activated, every subsequent invoice that comes in will be analyzed against these configurations. Users, this is the kind of the last stop before putting invoices through the system. The identity provider configuration will allow for importing those users that are set up in that Active Directory setup. You would go through user by user and set their approval limit. Again, if I go through these user guides, it's going to talk you through what those values need to be, whether that's the same for both types of invoices, or maybe you have a different tolerance based on PO versus non-PO. You will be required to have one user be your unlimited final approver. This would be where if the invoice in question breaches everyone else's invoice tolerances, it will land in this person's queue as the final authority on whether or not this invoice is going to be passed through to BC. So this would likely be your CFO or the president of the company, whomever has that utmost authority. Next and finally would be the approval routing. This is going to be where you can dynamically set by user the approval chain, the approval routing path of an invoice. So if an invoice comes into Daniel Alexander and say he is our IT manager, you know, he's going to be good to go up to $8,000, but say if it's $9,000, it's going to go to Mary for POs. Maybe for non-POs, if it's over $8,000, we're going to go to Danny. Or again, you can have it the same for both PO types. And it's that easy to set up the approval routing. So likewise, up the chain, if I were to go to Mary, if her limit is $150,000, above and beyond that, I want it to go to Matt O'Neill. So it's extremely easy and dynamic to be able to set your approval routing for each user in the system. And you know, that's about it. That's all you got to do, and it's an extremely fast time to solution. At this point, if I were to click save here, I could start pushing invoices through and get my AP automation started and going, and I'm off and running with Simply AP.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. It's, you know, it amazes me every time. And we you know, obviously we look at the product a lot more than those of the audience joining us here on the phone. But, you know, when we talk about just how fast it is, the reason that we call it Simply AP is not just about how simple it is to use, but also just how fast it is to get started with. And that helps people start realizing, you know, the benefits of automation. Right now, especially, we're hearing from companies that are really struggling to hire. There's, you know, shortage of resources, and automation can play such a key role in this. We just have a couple of closeout slides, and then we're going to have time for questions. So just a quick reminder, go ahead and enter into the question box if you have specific questions that you'd like to address while we're here on the call, or we're happy to schedule a follow-up if you've got individual questions you'd like to discuss regarding your use case in your business. But a lot of the benefits that we see from our customers and hear from our customers are displayed here for you. So the minimized data entry, remember, that's the challenge for 74% of AP professionals, the #1 challenge. And as you saw with both demonstrations for Quick Payables for GP and Simply AP for Business Central, we take that out of the equation, which reduces the overall costs for your AP process by about to 80%. And we have had customers validate that for us. Some customers would even say higher than that, because what used to take them weeks now takes them a couple of hours from end to end in this process, and with the visibility. So that fast time to solution from sign up to just using it in hours. For quick payables for GP, just full transparency, there is still an implementation time and setup for that. But again, if it's a priority for you, we can get it done in a pretty quick period as well, just a few weeks if that's what your goal is. We apply industry best practices for these invoice workflows. We've been in this business for 25 years, and we've learned from our customers, from our partners, exactly the criteria that you need to apply to invoice workflows for AP automation. The third thing on the right there in the middle, the gain complete visibility into AP process. Again, especially right now where we're all working remotely or in a lot of different locations, that visibility is key. So you have access to that from end to end. The easy setup, self-guided help tips, it's, you know, like signing up for your favorite streaming service. It's, you know, walk me through and I'm ready to go. So that's very, very convenient for people. And that comfort and familiarity doesn't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to spend weeks training my team. We've had people tell us it's just like using the ERP system. If you can do that and you know the business process for the workflow, then they can just take it away, and there's very little training even required. And it really helps you meet those audit and financial compliance requirements. We've had people, again, sail through audits. They've also said, you know, hey, we can get through our financial audits, our healthcare audits, because we have things documented, we have things accessible very visibly. Again, we'd be happy to discuss your use cases and how that fits within your organization. And if you are new to KwikTag and maybe haven't seen either of these products before, just a little bit of background on us. We are very focused on solutions for finance teams. Just like the example Sean and I shared earlier about the customer that got, you know, up and running in 5 weeks and was winning awards and all of that. You know, that's where we live, that's where we focus. And we're also very focused on the Microsoft community as a result of our 25 years of experience. So we're really committed to the community. We're really about advancing and really making the work life better for those teams. Those are the kinds of stories that we love to hear, because now they're going home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon instead of 7 o'clock at night like it used to be. Plus they're winning all those awards. And we have more than 120,000 business users around the globe, companies of all shapes and sizes, industries that really find value in automating their AP process. It's affordable and scalable. As I mentioned, usage-based pricing makes it really easy to get up and running. And then as your organization grows, it's easy to scale because it's a tiered scalable sliding scale fee, I guess you could say. Talk to Sean if you're interested in that, or reach out to Tom and his team at Turnkey, and we'd be happy to have a follow-up to see what it would look like for your organization. And finally, we're committed to continuous innovation. The AI products that you saw in the demonstration today are, part of our core foundation, and we continue to introduce, cutting edge technology into those solutions. And we look forward to being able to continue to enhance that as we move forward. I realize we are just coming to the top of the hour. We do have a question here. And V, I'm going to address this to you. Can KwikTag be used if the PO approval process and receiving doesn't occur directly in GP, but through integration with RecLogic?
So on the GP side, we do have an integration with RecLogic. We would need some further scoping on that, but there is some support there, yes. So there is possibility there.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, and if anybody does have further questions, we'd be happy to address them offline in a follow-up. Again, thank you everybody for joining us today. Thanks for the discussion and your attention. Sean, Michael, thank you for the great demonstrations. And Tom, back to you. Thanks for having us today. We're really excited to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you you all coming on the call today. Look forward to seeing everybody on the next webinar. And of course, if you have any needs or any questions about KwikTag and what they can do, is we can obviously set up another call. Feel free to just email us at sales@turnkeytech.com, and we will route your question and your needs to the appropriate channel. So thanks everybody once again at KwikTag, and thank you to all of you for attending. Hope everybody has a great day. Take care.